a mastermind, then became a client, and I became a client of his. My first book that I'm writing is with Scribe, and consider Tucker a friend. And for those of you watching, I'm actually going to do the same right now. Please go on to your Facebook. Well, if you're watching this live, it gives you an option to actually start a watch party. And if you start that watch party, it's really cool because we go live on my page, but then you're also live on your page. So would really encourage you guys to help us spread the word here. I'm actually doing it as we speak. Technology, isn't it wild? Like what we can do. Like I'm live with Tucker right here, and then I'm going live on my phone. And the focus of what we're going to be talking today is really, really powerful. It's how to connect emotionally with your children. And for those of you who are tuning in for one of the first times on the Connection series, the reason my wife and I started this was because we want to make a difference for families, and we believe our family and family brand is, really the process. We took our family through the campfire effect and created our family's brand. And so family brand is really the campfire effect for families. And I was working with amazing entrepreneurs like Tucker, and I was helping them get clear on what they stand for and what they want to be known for and how to put that in language. And I had this thought a few years ago, like, that'd be probably really important to do with our families. And I came home and told my wife on a date, like, we should take our family through the process. And so with family brand, we believe that every family can define what it is their family stands for. And every family can declare out into the world what it is their family is known for by creating their family's brand. Like no differently than a company does, or no differently than an entrepreneur does. And yet I've found, for me and a lot of entrepreneur clients of mine, it's actually easier for us to be more intentional about the brand of our business and the culture of our company than it is about the very own brand and culture of our own home and our own family. But when you create your family's brand, it's really like, we see it as you're planting your family's flag, and you're like, this is what Maxes are known for. This is what it means to be a Max. And that will allow you to create this intentional culture in your home that will not only benefit your children, but like, I just don't think we realize that the foundation that puts in place that can benefit hundreds or thousands of our posterity for generations to come. And for me, that was a big deal of like taking a stand again for the Smith family name and reestablishing what it means to be a Smith. And so if the way you can follow the Connection series, you can go to the Family Brand page on Facebook and like our page and know about upcoming interviews we have with people like Tucker. You can also go into Facebook and search Family Brand Community and join our Facebook group. And when you do that, we have a really cool gift, a new course that my wife and I created that we'll give you as a gift for joining the community. Okay, so Tucker, Tucker is the founder of Scribe, a really amazing company that helps entrepreneurs and thought leaders and individuals like myself that know they have a book in them, but don't know how to get it out of them, and they get it out in a really profound way. Tucker's a 4 times New York Times bestselling author himself. So Tucker, thanks for jumping on here today, man.
Of course, man. My pleasure.
And one of the things that's really cool about Tucker is like, I dress pretty casually, but I always know that I can dress as casual as I want when I'm around Tucker, because I always know he's going to dress a level even more casual than me. And so, Tucker, one of the things before we jump into this idea of how to connect emotionally with your children, I've asked every entrepreneur that's been on this so far, why do you think it is, Tucker, that as entrepreneurs, it's oftentimes easier to be more intentional with the brand and the culture of our business and our companies and in our very own families and homes?
Because when you're dealing with your company, you don't have to face your issues, your emotional issues. Yeah. I mean, this is that simple, man. Like, but when you start dealing with your family, then you have mirrors in front of you and you've got to address your own stuff. And so if you're not ready to do that, or if that's painful, or you've never done that, then I'd much rather I'd much rather talk about my neighbor's problems than my own. Same thing.
Totally. The other thing that I think is really interesting about, about this idea of business versus family, dude, in business, you and I, like, we can do this Facebook Live right now and immediately get some likes, comments, shares, like achievement recognition.
Right.
Dude, there's like my last guest, Melina, she's like, your kids aren't coming to you and being like, Mom, you folded my laundry so well and put it in my drawer. That's amazing. Way to go.
Yeah, right.
Or, hey, Dad, like, I never really thought to thank you for, like, the job you do, or this, like,
if you do a great job as a parent, they might figure it out 30 years later.
Totally. And so like the idea of that is like there's this idea of achievement that we're drawn to as entrepreneurs that, like, let's just face it, doesn't always happen in a home or in a family instantaneously.
No, it doesn't.
So Tucker, talk about this idea of when you said, like, I asked Tucker, I said, man, Tucker, you're 4 times New York Times bestselling author. Are you're only like one of 2 people alive or 3 people alive that actually hold that title, right?
No. There's a bunch of them that have written a lot of books. I'm the one who I had 3 books on the list at once. So
Okay.
for nonfiction, it's like me, Malcolm Gladwell, Brene Brown, and Michael Lewis. I'm the only one who had 3 at one time.
Okay, so that's a statistic. There's 4 of you
Yeah.
alive today that have only had 3 on the New York Times bestselling list at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. And I'm just updating the title of our live because right now it just says Chris Smith -live, which isn't very inspiring. So this is how to connect emotionally with your children. And so, you know, you've had this tremendous success as an author. You've had tremendous success and having tremendous success with Scribe Media. You know, how many books have you guys helped authors write?
We've done 1,700 so far, and some big ones like David Goggins' book and Tiffany Haddish and a bunch of others. Yeah.
That's amazing. And so why, Tucker, of all the things, I mean, I ask every one of my guests, hey, like, what's the thing you would want to talk about the most that could make the biggest difference for families? Why did you decide that you wanted to talk about how to connect emotionally with your children?
It's funny because today I'm working on a book that has a lot to do with this. It's not about families at all, but it's about the only book I'm working on right now. Like I have other people who do the books in my company, people who are usually better writers than me, but I'm working on a book with a guy named Dan Engel about how to integrate psychedelic therapy experiences, right? And so that's really changed my life for the last 2 years. And I met him, and he's kind of like one of the big leaders in this field. And I realized, like, when I was trying to kind of figure out how to navigate this world, there was almost nothing out there that was effective for me. I had to kind of learn it on my own. And I was like, I got with him and I'm like, we need to write this book. Like, you're the expert, I'll be the novice, and we'll go through and kind of do it together. And so we ended up writing it like a fable. So it's sort of like there's a character who does MDMA assisted psychotherapy, and like he does like 3 cycles and how this impacts him and his family. So why this matters is I was reading a book. I've read this book many times, but I was rereading it today because we reference it quite a bit in the book. It's called The Drama of the Gifted Child by Alice Miller. And I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but this is the book. It was published in probably, I think, 1979, written by a Polish psychologist, Alice Miller. This is the book that essentially identified modern child abuse, right? Not physical or sexual. Like, people always know beating a kid's beating a kid, right? Or some sort of a sexual violation has pretty much always been like, everyone's like, okay, that's awful. But what most people, until really the last 30 years, have not understood is the emotional abuse that a lot of kids go through. Wow. And Alice was the first one who identified this, who gave it a name and identified it and talked about it. And so, like,
what's the name of the book, Tucker?
It's called The Drama of the Gifted Child.
I'm going to put this in the comments here.
By Alice Miller. Mostly women read this book. It's not a lot of dudes because it kind of has a weird woo-woo title. But it's like, this book changed my life, fundamentally changed my life. And almost everyone I know who has real problems with either narcissism or depression, they read this book and they see their life.
Wow.
And so her thesis is that most people, most people who are depressed or narcissistic or both, are so because they had parents who never really connected with them emotionally, or worse, who denied their emotions or used the child as a way to fulfill their own issues, right? And it's not about making your parents evil or blaming everything on your parents. It's just a reality for a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And so the whole rest of the book is explaining this thesis, right? And I think I read this book 8 years ago, and it's one of the reasons I started therapy, because I read this book and I was like, who is this witch that is in my head that understands my entire childhood and life? Like, this is like, how is it a Polish Jew who survived the Holocaust and lives in Switzerland knows my soul? right? Like this is amazing. And so anyway, so what she details is exactly how parents don't connect with their kids.
Wow.
And mainly it's because, look, if you had parents who didn't connect with you, then you're not connected to yourself. You don't understand your own emotions. You're not present with yourself. So how could you do it for your kids?
True.
And it's not about like, oh, your parents were evil. You're the good person. Let's say bad things about them. It's not about that at all. Most people who had bad, quote, bad parents, their parents probably thought they loved them, probably did their best. And if they watched a movie of how they interacted with their kids, would probably be horrified.
Right.
But they had no idea.
But doing the best they could with what they were given.
Exactly. And so that's what's so cool about Alice Miller. She's not like, listen, I'm not trying to make your parents evil. And the thing is, if they did all this, it's still your responsibility to fix it, right?
Yeah,
like even if they did it, you got to fix it because it's your life, right? And so, which is obviously key for anything. And so I was thinking about that today when you texted me, and I was like, oh, well, let's talk about this. So the question becomes, you can read the book on your own. What have I done in my life to connect with my kids, to make sure that I don't replay my parents' mistakes on them, right? Well, the first thing I've done, and this is probably a tough pill for most people to swallow, but it's just the truth. The first thing I did was get therapy, right? And talk therapy, psychedelic therapy, whatever it is. I did as much as I could to emotionally connect with myself and develop as much self-awareness and as much self-care as I could. Because here is a fact: no matter how much your parents love you, and no matter how much you love your kids, no one can give their children more than they give themselves.
Wow. I'm taking notes here. That's amazing.
So if you do not love yourself, you can tell yourself you love your kids, but you can't show them more love than you show yourself. That's just not really possible, right? And so that's another sort of big point she made. And so the first thing I did, even before I had kids, was I got to do my work. Really, I was doing my work to meet my wife, and then the kids will come. So I did as much work as I could, but obviously you're not going to be perfect before you have kids. So if that's in your head, forget it. Like, and then I had my son, right? My first kid was a son. And oh man, it brought up all kinds of stuff, right? And it was really, I'll tell you what was so hard for me. What was hard connecting with my son when he was little? Well, first off, as a man, it's okay to just accept I don't have a huge role to play in an infant's life. You know, you can hold it and love it. If you're one of those dudes who, like, as soon as you see your baby, you just gush and love, that's cool. But I'm in the other camp of dudes who are like, okay, I love it in theory, but it's just a little blob right now, right? And all it does is cry and poop and sleep and drink titty milk, which is cool. Nothing wrong with it, right? Like, but I'm not going to pretend I have a relationship with this little blob of pooping and crying. That's just not, that's me projecting onto it. And I understand why women do that because it, you know, love and all, it's cool, it's great. I was all supporting my wife doing that, but I didn't pretend I had a relationship with the kid until I started to interact with me, and then I developed a relationship. And now my son's 5.5. We have an incredible relationship. But so I gave myself space for that. But then also I realized, oh man, watching my son get loved on and doted over by his mother. I married a great woman. His mother and my mother-in-law, his grandmother, was like really hard for me. Not because I was jealous of him. Like, I was super happy that I picked, you know, a really good wife and she had a good mom, but that it made me revisit what I never got. Right. And so like but I realized that's my problem. And so that there was the first thing. I'm not going to dump this on my son. I'm not going to be resentful of him or envious of him or whatever. I'm going to go over here and deal with my stuff so that I can show up for him as best as possible. Right. And so then as I started dealing with him as he was growing up, every time I would make a mistake or do something wrong, I would just do everything I could to identify it in the moment and own it. And I'll give you a really good example that was a turning point for me, man. So I forget how old my son was. He was old enough to talk, probably like 2.5 or 3. So he was old enough to talk, probably 2.5. He could talk and walk, but he was still an uncoordinated, fumbling mess, right? And so probably 2.5. And he knocked over a bottle once. I'll never forget this. He knocked over a bottle and it broke. And it's like, whatever, it's not a big deal, right? And I didn't think I was yelling at him. I was just like, Bishop, what are you doing? I told you to be careful. Like that's not yelling to me. Yelling is, what the fuck, Chris, or whatever, right? But I looked at his face, man. And he had this look of like, just like fear. It's not fear. It was crestfallen. Like he was just totally crushed. And he scrunched up like this. Like it looked like he looked like he had been stabbed in the chest. And at that moment, I had to make a decision about who I was going to be as a man and a father. Was I going to own the fact that I just hurt my child, right? Or was I going to tell myself a story about why that was okay? And I wanted to, Chris, it sounds terrible, but it's the truth. For a split second, I was like, I went through the whole argument list in my head. Fuck him. He should know better. I told him not to do. 2.5 years old, mind you. He should know better. I went through the whole thing, and then thank God I'd done enough work where I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Even if you're quote right, he's 2.5, right? Yeah. And so like I grabbed him and I said, all right. He started crying. And I'm like, hold on a minute, buddy. I held it, let him cry for a second, right? Because this is why I fucked up. So it's like, all right, now I got to figure out a way to fix this. So I'd been teaching him that we all make mistakes. We talked about this, right? Daddy makes mistakes. So I said, Bishy, we all make mistakes, right? Said, yeah. It's like, okay, well, Daddy made a mistake. Daddy should not have yelled at you. And what do we do when we make mistakes? And that's like, we kind of have a family brand like you talked about. One of our family rules, we just develop them organically. One of our very first ones was, when you make a mistake, you say you're sorry and you help clean it up. And so I said, all right, well, Bishy, buddy, I'm telling you, I'm sorry. Daddy shouldn't have yelled at you. Daddy was wrong. So I'm going to hold you until you're done crying. Okay. And I could feel him. He exhaled. And it was like he let go of the trauma that I caused him. Like, it's like he let it go. I didn't deny his emotions. I didn't tell him to stop crying. He was sad, regardless of whatever totally. Was right or wrong. I did that to him. And so then I helped him get through it in the moment. Right. And now it's like, oh, now, of course, my anger and my frustration, that's all shit my parents dumped on me. And so the question for me is, am I going to put it on them or not? And that's how you emotionally that's one of the ways that I emotionally connect with my kids it's kind of how I had to start, is identifying when I was doing something that hurt them, or not connecting with them, or denying their emotions, and then coming out of that and doing the right thing. Because it's really easy to fix things with little kids in the moment. It's really easy. You just have to identify it. I'll give you another example from a week ago. So my daughter is 3.5 now, and she's very outgoing and very loud. She's a little girl. She's very loud and boisterous and assertive and all these cool things that I want her to be. But like, it's also fucking aggravating. I have a 3.5-year-old running around screaming all the time and all this nonsense, right? And so like, I try and help her learn a balance, right? Like I never try and squash her or put down her joy or emotions or anything she feels. We know in the house, you're allowed to feel. That's one of our house rules. Anyone can feel anything they want at any time. But we all take responsibility for our own emotions, so it's kind of a balance. But with her, she was asked, we were at something like Bishop had lost his wallet, and this triggered me. Because I remember losing my wallet as a kid, and it was like a whole catastrophic thing for me. And it was like, I didn't even realize how it was until he lost it. And I realized how agitated I was at this, both at him and just with the situation, right? And like, it was a kid wallet. It's not a big deal, but I was still whatever. And so she kept, Daddy, I'm thirsty. Daddy, I'm thirsty. Daddy, I'm like, we're going to fucking lunch in a minute. I didn't say fuck. I said, Vaughn, stop. We're going to lunch in a minute. We'll get you water in a minute. And then like 2 minutes later, Daddy, I'm really thirsty. And she's 3.5. Like, this is normal behavior for a 3.5-year-old. And eventually I kind of got frustrated. I was like, Vaughn, I don't care. Be quiet. Be quiet for a few minutes. Then we'll get water. I don't care about your thirst right now. And to her credit, she was like, fuck you. Like, she got angry. She's like, don't tell me to be quiet, or don't tell me you don't care. Be quiet's okay. I need you to be quiet for a minute for a reason, that's fine. But don't tell me you don't care, is what she said. And like, at first I want to dismiss her again. And I'm like, fuck, she's totally right. And so at first, in the moment I said, you're right, Vaughn, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told you I don't care. I do care about your emotions, but we got to find Bishop's wallet right now. So I do care you're thirsty, and we're going to get you water in a minute. And then I kept going with what I was doing. Then blah, 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 fast forward, got her water. And then I sat with her. I said, come here, sweetie. I said, look, I didn't try and explain myself or rationalize with her. I said, Daddy told you he didn't. Do you remember when Daddy said he didn't care? She said, yeah. I said, all right, well, remember what's our saying about mistakes? Everybody makes mistakes, right? Well, Daddy made a mistake. Daddy should not have said that. How did you feel when Daddy said? I let her express. How did you feel when Daddy said that? I felt very angry and upset. Well, first she wasn't sure, and I said, "Did you feel angry? Yeah. Did you feel upset? Yeah." And then a lot of times I'll throw in other things to make sure they're not disagreeing with me. I'll say, "Did you feel poopy?" And she's like, "No." And so it's like, all right, so she's angry and upset. I got it. And I'm like, well, that's totally okay. I understand why you felt angry and upset. And I just want to tell you, I'm sorry. Like, what do we do when we make mistakes? We say we're sorry, we fix it. Well, I'm telling you right now, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. And I apologize. And I don't mean that. Daddy does care. And dude, Chris, I'll tell you, she turned and she looked at me. I'll never forget this in my life. And she goes, yay, I feel so happy now. And let's hug and kiss. And she gave me a hug and a kiss. We were at Shake Shack and I started crying like a fool. It was like ridiculous because it was like, this is something my parents never did for me, ever. Acknowledge my emotions,
Totally.
and validate them, especially after they were wrong. And then like, here I was like basically just following our family rules. And like, I could see the impact. It's because like you said earlier, you don't know when you're a good parent. That was a moment where I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm a good or a bad parent, but I did the right thing there. And she may not remember that, or she may, but she now understands that her emotions are valid and she feels connected to me and she feels seen and she feels relevant and important. And this is something I never had as a kid, you know?
Amazing. Like these couple examples. I hope everyone, by the way, for those of you who just joined, I know some of you just joined us live, welcome. Please start a watch party on your page. Tucker's dropping some really amazing nuggets here on parenting and how to emotionally connect with your children by emotionally connecting with yourself first. And just so many things you talked about with your family rules, which we're going to get into here in a minute as well. But like, yeah, please start a watch party on your page. If you go to the Family Brand Facebook page and like us there, you can follow the Connection series and more interviews with people like Tucker. And yeah, welcome everyone that's watching. Christina, Steve, Homer, Samantha, Jed, you guys are awesome. So Tucker, one of the things that we talk about, so we're behind the scenes, my wife and I are working feverishly to build the Family Brand course, which is again, the Campfire Effect for families. And we said, okay, what makes up a family brand? Right. And this is just our opinion and our experience. And we divided and how we're going to teach it in the course is that your family brand consists of the culture, the language, and the experiences in your home and your family. And the first pillar of culture is creating and holding space. And at first I was like, man, do we put that in there? I know it's been big in our family. And then the more we've done some beta tests with families, we're like, it has to be in there, because what I hear you saying, Tucker, is really this idea of connecting emotionally with your children and the drama of The Gifted Child by Alice Miller. It's like, really, can we love our children enough to grant them space to be who they are, as they are, with no judgment?
And accept them for who they are with no judgment. Yeah.
So can they be seen, heard, and valued and accepted and celebrated for who they are, as they are, with love and no judgment? And like, that's what I hear you talking about. Now, what's cool though, is like, I want you guys to see the connection, all of you watching, that having family rules or family values and things you live by, those can be the reminders to hold and create the space. So like, the space is created by love and it's held by no judgment. Now, one of the things that had me really wake up to this idea of space, Homer, is Homer's watching. Sorry, Tucker. I was looking at Homer's name when I said it. So Tucker, is that I walked into a company in Salt Lake a few years ago, a client of mine, and they brought me in to help them develop their mission, their vision, what they stand for, and their story. Already really successful advertising agency. I walk into that company and I have 2 meetings that morning. I was there all day. And after the first 2 meetings, I was like, I've never met a company that has a better culture. Like literally the people at this company would take a bullet for the founders. Like they would die for each other. Like the love and the connection. And you talked about like, we're just not this connection. And then it shocked me because I thought they were bringing me in to upgrade their mission, vision, values, and story. They had never created a mission statement. They'd never created a vision statement. They had no stated values as a company. And I was like, how have they? It kind of started blowing my mind. And I was like, oh, I'm being brought in to create the mission, the vision, and the values. So then I started asking them, like, what has you guys have this amazing culture? You've never declared like and defined what it is you stand for. And it said, we have an atmosphere here and an environment that has been created by our founders where all of us can be our authentic selves. And we know that we can just be who we are. And it's going to be like, we're going to be accepted for that. And we all come from really diverse backgrounds. And I was like, wow. And that's that whole idea. That's the first time I started thinking about and then researching this idea of creating and holding space. So now they realized that they could upgrade that power even more by having stated mission, vision, values. But like you can have the greatest mission, vision, values in the world or the greatest family rules. But if you don't actually hold space, none of it matters. It's just talk. It's the classic mission statement with an eagle flying over the mountain with some lame statement on it that no one knows. But now when you can actually create that space,
when you do both, then it's super
the language, powerful. It's like super anything's powerful. Possible.
Yeah. Yes. 100%.
Okay. So this idea of, I love what you said. So you can't love someone else more than you love yourself. You can't connect emotionally with your children or your spouse more than you can connect with yourself. And really, Tucker, if you were to ask me, hey, Chris, what's really like, if you were to say like, hey, Chris, what's the scheme behind Family Brand? If there was a scheme, it's a good scheme. The scheme is that we're really like, we want to get inside homes and families and get them to create their culture and their brand and their mission, their vision, their values. But really the scheme is that at the end of that, every member of that family loves themselves. If that's all that gets accomplished, if I love who I am and I'm free to be who I am and I lead, because one of two things is going to happen. All of us, including our children, are going to eventually be who they are anyways. So we can either support them in that from a young age and let them leave our homes with that foundation in place, or we can put a bunch of barriers and roadblocks in the way that they're going to have to overcome it and do a lot of work later in life to get there. But people are going to finally be who they are. Or unfortunately, sometimes maybe they never do. But okay, so talk about this idea of like, because I've noticed in every single one of those situations, you're like, I came back to our family rules as the reminder to create the space. I came back to the family rules. Talk about the power of, your family rules are our family values, right? It's like Max's are, Max's do, Max's, and which by the way, I have a really big belief that when any of you watching this, if you've already created family values or created family rules, there's a power in linking your name to each one of them. And so instead of just being like, hey, everyone's allowed to feel, Maxes allow each other to feel. Instead of like, we always say, sorry, and clean it up. Maxes, there's just something about the name. It just feel like
because it's an identity thing. No, it is. Totally. That is. Yeah, you're right. I don't say that. I always say we, but it is more powerful to say Maxes. You're right.
So talk about talk about why these rules. Why'd you create them? You guys obviously have one of the best workplace cultures in your company, Scribe. What was the thought of like, man, we should really create language and rules around our culture in our home?
So it's funny. Veronica and I had talked about it, and then you're partly to blame. I had a conversation with you about this a few years ago, or maybe a year ago. I don't remember when. Maybe it was when I came to your workshop. I can't remember when, but what I do remember is I had a conversation with a guy named Rick Sapio, who I'll introduce you to if you want. He's done this. I don't think he doesn't teach it at all, but he did this thing like a family placemat where he has all his rules on it and all this sort of stuff. I don't know if you know Rick. And then I had a conversation with you like 2 weeks later or a week later. So it was like, I was like, okay, this is a sign from God or the universe or whoever that we need to do this. So Veronica and I sat down and we just like started thinking, and like our kids were young. So we kind of laid the framework and then we went to them and we said, all right, what do you guys think about this? What do you think about this? And then they were able to opt in. And then every year we kind of look at them again and make sure, okay, are these still right? Because then it's buy-in. Then you can't say, well, I don't agree with these rules. You agree to the rules. Like you help make them.
One of my favorite quotes around this is like, and that's why you want to get your children involved at young as they are, is like, those who help plan the battle don't battle the plan. Exactly. So you guys sat down and did that.
Yep. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And I can read them off to you if you want.
I would love to hear them. And like in our experience, Tucker, go ahead. In our experience, Tucker, when you start to realize that the power of your family rules or your family values, that you literally can use them. And then when we do every single day, like if you have young kids, probably like Tucker and I, that's not a matter of if your kids are going to get in arguments and fights and bicker. It's like just when and how often.
Yeah.
But do you know how much more powerful it is for me to be able to go to my kids when they're fighting or arguing, instead of saying like getting after them, be like, guys, knock it off.
Yeah.
To be able to go like, hey guys, I thought we said that Smiths love and support one another.
Yeah.
Like, I thought you guys helped create that. And they're like, we did create it, right?
Did,
or it's like when one of my kids is like, Dad, I can't start the lawnmower on my own. And I totally know he can. It's like, dude, I thought you were the one that helped us come up with Smiths Do Hard Things. And then they like turn around and walk. And it's like, and so it's just like this reminder of these are the principles that we live by. You guys helped create it. This is who we said we are. So yeah, what are your guys, Tucker?
All right, so we have 10 rules and 9 principles. So we kind of have them like a little separate. So I'll do principles first. Is we tell the truth. We choose the courageous act, not the cowardly act. We try our best. We treat each other with the respect that we deserve. And we deserve is very important because it's like that recognizes that other people can disrespect themselves, right?
Right.
We fully commit to the jobs and activities that we choose, which is like, that's he's like, hey, Bishop, you picked this part. Are you going to commit to it or not?
Right.
We earn money. We're not given money, right? That one will probably eventually change. But we had to put that in because Granny was just giving them too much money. Like so we had to kind of put
that's
that
awesome,
in. Right? So now they make art for Granny and they sell it to her for like the prices they get for it are like Warhol-esque. It's ridiculous, but at least they're making something, right?
Right.
We love and accept each other as we are, not as we expect each other to be.
Love that.
Right? We're fully responsible for our own emotions, but no one else's. And when we say I can't, what we're really saying is I won't.
I love that. Those are the principles.
Those are principles. Now the rules are a little bit more specific. Fussy babies go to their room. So that's like, you can cry anywhere. You can be sad. That's all fine. Fussy is like throwing a fit, right?
Right.
And dude, I knew this was working when I was having an argument with my wife in the kitchen. And I was like kind of exasperated. And Bishy comes over. He goes, Daddy, fussy babies go to their room. And I was like, fuck! Stormed off because he was 100% right.
That's awesome.
I was like, oh.
That's like, like when people say all the time, like, oh, this is really good for your kids. I'm like, yeah, like our kids hold us accountable to it just as 100%. Much. Like, all the time.
If you're not, this does not work if it's not a family code. I think you probably made that clear to your people, obviously, right? Like it's got to apply equally to everybody or it's total bullshit.
Totally.
Yeah. Next one is we don't have to eat our dinner, but if we don't, then we don't get a treat. We don't keep unhealthy food in the house. That's mostly for Granny. Here's a big one. If it's safe and legal and within the rules, the kids get to choose it for themselves. So like they get to pick their clothes. They get to decide the activities they do that are within, that we can afford and we can get them to. Like we build a very strong set of walls, but inside those walls, it's a free play sandbox for them.
Yep.
Right? So the boundaries are big and real, but inside of that, we make them as far apart as possible, and they're always they can do it themselves. If they can do it themselves, they have to do it themselves. The kids do. That's Granny too. She was doing too much stuff for them, and so that now it's like, dude, our kids are so. People come over and they're freaked out because like Bishop, like they won't even talk to us. They'll just go in. They'll take the ladder, go in the pantry, get some food, get some snacks down, cut open the thing, throw away the top, go walk back over. Someone's looking at me like, what the hell's going on? That kid's 5, and I'm like, that's not normal. They're like, no. Yeah. I'm like, well, it's normal in our house. Yeah. I don't know.
I think one of the greatest gifts, like this has been a recurring theme on all the guests, is like, man, if kids can learn resourcefulness, it's like that's why one of our values is Smiths are creators. It's like, dude, look, not only are you a creator, but you're 100% responsible for it. Like,
we clean up after ourselves. Pretty easy one.
Yeah.
When we make a mistake, we take responsibility, say we're sorry, and do our best to clean it up. That's what I said before. Here's a big one. If we have a problem, we sort it out together, or we both go to our rooms. So that's a big one that we have, where it's like, because I don't want to be the judge for the kids, right? And like, I don't want to be judge and jury, because that's not how life is. Life doesn't. There's not. oh, this person's in charge and I get to appeal. No, that's all bullshit, right? And so, like, outside of, like, the obvious things, if Bishop and Vaughn are fighting, I'm like, guys, look, it's real simple. You guys sort it out together, or you both go to your rooms. I don't.
Yeah.
Either one's fine with me.
Yeah, we have,
or like they have an iPad, and I'm like, either you guys work it out together, or I take it away. And
totally.
then they have to negotiate.
Like one of the things we've done recently when we always have kids, close in age, and there's just always this time where, like, for whatever reason, those two particular kids have just been going at it for like 4 or 5 days in a row. Like, they're just bothering each other. And we're like, look, okay, if you guys can't learn to be kind to each other and play with each other, we don't play with friends.
Yeah.
Like, why would we ever have the ability to go play with friends when we can't even like sort it out with our own family, who is our best friends,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, okay. So Sarah asked a great question. I wanted to address this. Sarah, thank you for the question. What about when there are blended families or different names? Sarah, I love that question because we've helped a number of families in the beta test group that are, joined families, mixed families. And I actually think you have an opportunity there to create a 1 + 1 = 3. It's like, look, what if we took the best of the Peary name, we took the best of the Nally name, and we created this 1 + 1 = 3. It doesn't have to be a less than, right? Like, and so it could be like, the Peary Nallys, and you combine that last name, or you could even say like Tucker, you could say we. But I also like what's been cool about Family Brand, unexpected to us, in the one workshop we did last August and in the beta group, we've taken families with young children through the process. We've taken empty nesters who have grown children, that they re-enrolled their grown children to come back and go through Family Brand. We've taken 2 people that aren't even married, that don't have children yet. We took a single person who wanted to go do this with their siblings. It's like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Like, it's never too late to create your family's brand and define what it is you want to stand for. And so, Sarah, I think you guys have a tremendous opportunity to still do that. And one of the things that I'm really big on in Family Brand, so we have, again, culture and language and experiences. Culture, there's space, leadership, and then roots. One of the things that there's this growing body of research out there that says one of the greatest indicators of a child's future well-being, it's a big statement, like one of the greatest indicators of a child's well-being, identity, ability to deal with hard things, is how much they know about their ancestors and their heritage. Because it gives them this sense of like, oh, I'm part of something. So you mean my great-great-grandfather that came over here on the boat and like left his country and sacrificed everything and like didn't know the language? Like, whoa, like that's my that blood flows through my veins.
I'm not going to be a schlub. How can I be a schlub now? Right.
Dude, yeah. When I realized that my great-great-great-grandfather, Christopher Layton, who I'm named after, seriously, like, this was a turning point in my life. I'm 10 years ago. We're separated, going to get divorced. Melissa and I, lowest point in my life felt like a failure as a husband, father, as an entrepreneur. And I read this family history book, and I read about my great-great-great-grandfather that came over here from England, started 3 towns, bought a ship, took it back to England when he made money in the gold rush, and loaded up 250 of his closest family, friends, and relatives and paid for their voyage to this country. And I'm like, dude, if that dude can start 3 towns and buy a ship, I can start a business. Like, it was this real thing for me. And it gave me this courage of like, and that was the first time I started telling myself, I am a powerful creator like Christopher Layton. That dude was a powerful creator. And so there's this, and so Sarah, my thing with that too is, you could go back and research the Nally side of the heritage. Steve could do the Pearys, and you guys bring that together. But, and yeah, granted, when you look in your family history, you're also going to find like some horse thieves and some people that you're not proud to know. Yeah. You'll find some of that. But I promise, if every single family digs into their family history, you'll find some really inspiring stories. And then here's what we found was really cool. You can link them to your rules and your values. See, one of the things I believe about storytelling and the campfire effect is when we teach a concept or a principle, we plant the seed. But in order for that seed to take deep root, it has to have a story attached to it. Yeah. Like, a seed does not take root until a story is attached to it. And so we didn't do all this at once, but have you seen the movie Coco with your kids, Tucker?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's all about heritage and their ancestors, and they put their pictures up on the ofrenda. Well, in our living room now, we have an ofrenda, and we have pictures of our ancestors, like my great-great-great-grandfather, Christopher Layton, my wife's great-grandmother, Annie, Dicey May, Brimhall, and we've linked each of our family values to one of the ancestors. So like, when we say Smiths do hard things, that's Caleb Clark Baldwin. When we say Smiths love and support one another, that's Ann Patton Peterson. And our kids know those stories, and they'll sit there for hours and listen to the stories of their ancestors, because it like resonates with their soul without us even having to tell them. They make the connection that like, whoa, that's my family. That's who I am.
Yeah.
And so like, there's just so much power. I would just encourage you guys to do that with like, any of you watching, find 1 or 2 family members or family ancestors. And I promise you, your kids will sit there without a device and listen to those old stories, because there's just something that speaks truth to their soul of like, that's who I am. Okay. So Tucker, this has been amazing. I love this idea too, that like one of the biggest realizations, to come back to what you said earlier, like we can't connect emotionally with our kids in a more powerful way than we can connect with ourselves. The biggest probably turning point in my marriage and in my life was when I realized like, I can either continue trying to change my wife and my kids who are perfect, but my critical nature, like I'm critical by nature. I don't know about you, Tucker, but I just know I am. I'm just critical. I can either keep trying to change my wife and kids all the time, or I can change myself. Like as simple as that, probably more people probably get that than I did. But you know what's interesting, Tucker? The best thing I've done for the whole of our family as a unit is work on me, the individual.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
And it's like, so Tucker, this quote, you've heard that quote, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Of course.
I actually have experienced a lot of situations where that's not true. I've walked into teams before where the whole of that team is less than the sum of its parts, because it's like they're canceling each other out and then creating a deficit.
Yeah.
In my marriage at one time, our whole was not greater than the sum of its parts. My wife as an individual was better than the whole, right? Like, so I added to that quote, and it was, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, so long as each part is whole.
That's a great quote.
So it's like, if you have imagine a family, like your family, you and your wife.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great quote.
If each of you are whole individuals, now it's like a 1 + 1 = 100. Anything's possible.
Yeah.
And so how do we create whole individuals? We have to give them space. Now, I love what you said earlier, Tucker, about like, dude, look, we have these really big, strong walls with really solid boundaries. Well, that's the space that you've created. But guess what? Inside of those walls, anything is possible. But that space of those big, strong walls is made with love, and it's held without judgment. And so
love
it's not like
safety.
It's not
like you got to love someone to provide safety for them. Yes.
Yeah. And it's not like it's a free for all. Like when we say, oh yeah, let them be who they want to be. It's like, we have no rules, no guidance, no principles.
Yeah,
it's like, no.
Of course not.
But like, what's interesting is like, I've also thought about this idea of culture, that like, if we really love someone, we're willing to challenge them more than they've ever been challenged. And we're willing to support them more than they've ever been supported. So I think a really healthy culture in a home and in a business is coupled with challenge and support. But it's this idea that like, man, what would it look like in a home where like every member of the family really can be a whole individual? It's like, you have a 1 + 1 = anything. Like
100%. It's funny you say that. Your quote's better, but we had one that I was thinking we're going to end up putting on our family values is, you take care of yourself the best you can for me, and I'll take care of myself the best I can for you. But the way you said it is better. But it's exact same idea. Yeah. All love begins with self-care.
Yeah. Okay, Tucker, couple last questions. And I know we're running out of time here. Something I ask all of my guests, kind of on the fly. With all of your rules and all of your principles, if you had to boil it down to and just said like, dude, what's the one thing that the Maxes stand for more than anything? Just what comes up for you?
Man, it's tough. If I had to boil it to one thing, I would say that we love and support each other.
Perfect. Okay. So then the next question is, what's the one thing that the Maxes want to be known for? Like if another family was talking about the Maxes out there in the world someday, you're like, you know what, that family, what would you be known for?
I struggle with that, because as much as I love the identity thing, like we clean up our whatever to instill good habits in them, the thing I'm very sensitive to is I don't want my children to feel like they have to live in my shadow.
Totally.
Or have to fulfill like some identity that I want them to have, So like I grew up loving sports, super into it. My son doesn't seem like he cares that much. He liked running and doing other. He's going to be more of like an outdoorsy, backpacky person. On one hand, it's heartbreaking to me, but on the other hand, it's like, okay, like I'm not in any way, shape, or form going to limit that or shame him or push him to baseball or anything like that, Like,
well, then maybe that's your answer right there. Maybe the answer, Tucker, is the one thing that Maxes want to be known for more than anything is creating space for everyone to be who they are.
That would be it. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's
like,
true. 'Cause people come over, dude. Like I'll tell you, like they'll see our kids swinging from stuff, and they're like, "Oh my god!" and they freak out. I'm like, "Stop it! They're fine." like it's not like we don't know what's going on, you know. So yes,
yeah.
we're known for letting people be who they are.
Yeah. And so one of the things that, just so you guys know, when we roll out the family brand course, but I want to give you this so you can start working on it in your family now. This is something we teach, Tucker, that we believe is, you know, there's intention behind it. So we have each family, we help them create their big idea of impact, which a company would call like their mission statement. We have them create their vision, and then we have them create their values. But we specifically encourage all families to start their big idea of impact or their mission with "we believe."
Yeah.
Not like our mission is, like we believe. And so when I asked you earlier, like, what do you stand for more than anything? And you said loving and supporting one another. So that could be a clue into like the thing we believe more than anything is like, we believe in loving and supporting one another. And then with your vision statement, we encourage families to start it with, we are committed to.
Yeah.
It's not like our vision is, it's like, no, this is what we're committed to. And so yours might be like, we are committed to creating space for everyone to be who they are.
Yeah.
Or we are committed to allowing everyone to be who they are. And then the values or the rules or the principles we live by,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last question. I know these are like tough to answer on the spot. That's why I love answering them. Is like, if you had to sum up the culture you're committed to creating in your home, a culture of like, and you had to put one word to it, what comes to mind for you?
The thing that comes to mind is responsibility.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, and no, Grant, none of this was prescriptive, but I just think there's clues into that, like that, like, and that's what we're encouraging families to do is like, get clear on what you stand for, what you want to be known for, the type of culture you're creating, and put language to it. And then obviously your rules and values, which the Maxes have done incredibly well. Last thing, Tucker, if you could give one piece of advice to families right now, like what could each family do right now to create more connection and be more connected as a family?
It's what I talked about at the beginning. Like the more you said it, like the more you can connect to yourself, the more you can connect to your kids. That like if you want one thing, that's the thing. That is that, because if you don't get that done, it's sort everything else is treating the symptoms.
Yep. Okay. Well, Tucker, thanks for coming on, man. I love Tucker. I love his work. We share an interest in jujitsu, which my boys have gotten me into recently. And you know, talk about things like that. That like, jujitsu wasn't my thing. I'm a basketball guy. Would have loved my oldest son to play basketball. He loves jujitsu, so it's like, well, I'll sign up for a jujitsu class. Now I've ended up loving it, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. It's really incredible, and yeah, thanks for all the wisdom and everything you shared.
Thanks for having me, dude.
Okay, so for everyone watching Tucker Max, please like this, comment, share, go to our Facebook page, like it. You can follow more of our interviews with people like Tucker sharing amazing wisdom. And then you can also go to Family Brand and do a search in the on Facebook. You can search Family Brand Community and join our private our Facebook group. And when you do, we have a gift for you. Okay, thanks everyone.